Welcome to the Sci-Fi Evolution channel. In accordance with the great traditions of bureaucratic incompetence spread throughout the country, the archives of extinct species have managed to lose their most important document, exactly 73,000 ecus. Perhaps this would not have caused such concern if the document had not explicitly warned of the imminent death of those who ignore it. But such is the nature of paperwork throughout the cosmos. The chief archivist of X-22, who preferred to be called Squorish, discovered this oversight, much to the annoyance of his superior, when he was cataloging the remains of another civilization that had seemingly disintegrated into atoms. The warning, written on materials ranging from cont pages to what appeared to be the alien equivalent of a holographic note, repeated the same phrase in different languages. Squorish, a meticulous bureaucrat who tends to sort things by color rather than importance, could have hidden this document along with other cryptic warnings. They say you shouldn't close your eyes to the clearing of emptiness and never trust a quantum computer. But something caught their attention. Every extinct civilization they've cataloged in the past has left the same warning about Terra. The probability that this was a coincidence was about equal to the possibility of finding a competent government official, which is astronomically unlikely. Well, isn't that amazing? Skvoreshnya muttered, simultaneously typing, filling out documents, and preparing what their kind considered coffee. Dozens of advanced civilizations capable of rebuilding stars and building planets from scratch were destroyed after a collision with a supposedly primitive world that did not even understand what a unified field theory was. The last warning came from the Xian, a race so advanced that they have managed to turn philosophy into a source of energy. Their last broadcast, recorded moments before their civilization disappeared, was particularly detailed. To anyone who stumbles upon it, we were fools. We've been watching Terra for centuries, convinced of our superiority, mocking their crude fusion reactors, their clunky genetic engineering, their obsession with creating small electronic devices to view images of tiny furry animals. But they always knew, that people weren't really developing the technology. They were just playing with her. Terra does not doze. She watches and waits. That was the end of the broadcast. It seemed incredibly frivolous to the starling. If you're going to leave an ominous warning for future civilizations, then at least have the decency to finish your sentences. The most intriguing aspect was the timeline. Each civilization encountered Terra during different periods spanning the Tisachicals, but the humans seemed to maintain the same level of technological development, never advancing beyond a certain point and never joining the interstellar community. Skvorez watched the latest footage of Terra, shot by the most sophisticated viewers. People continue to use vast expanses of space and struggle with basic space travel, while spending too much time arguing about whether the Earth's climate is really changing. Skvoreshnya wondered if this was a cosmic joke, or if we were overlooking something fundamental about our species. Zany, who used interpretive dance as a weapon, disappeared without a trace. The standard procedure would have been to submit a report and wait for approval, but Skvorts was not promoted. Feeling like a rebel, he decided to delve into the historical encounters with Terra. It was fun to read his research. The Xiani, a race so advanced that they surpassed the need for physical forms and existed as samples of pure energy, were the first to make contact with Terra. Their records said they approached Terra in the age of steam and coal, expecting to find primitive creatures worthy of elevation. However, after 3 months, the Xiangs disappeared, leaving behind only confusion about humanity's technological stagnation. The Nixels, self-proclaimed masters of biological engineering, were the next to make contact. They turned their entire species into living supercomputers and studied Terra during the Second World War. Nixelov's final broadcast consisted of one phrase: "They are not fighting with real weapons." Starling found this picture disturbing. All civilizations have disappeared without a trace. The RIL-7 team, representing the quantum community, arrived on Earth with an overwhelming technological advantage. Each of them disappeared after making similar observations about the apparent technological progress of mankind. They have spent 3 decades studying the human intertraxic, convinced that they will be able to understand this biological species through their digital communications. Their final report noted that they deliberately filled their networks with contradictory information, such as seal videos, as a cover. The mechanized computer, known for turning entire solar systems into computing machines, devoted a quarter of its computing power to analyzing human behavior. They ceased to exist during the calculations, but not before they transmitted their results. Their inefficiency was too obvious to be natural. "That was absurd," the starling muttered, and all 7 appendages twitched in frustration. No biological species could have maintained such a perfect kind of technological stagnation for thousands of years. They extracted new data, each of which was more ridiculous than the previous one. Andromedan communities, with their crystal intelligence and unshakable logic, have become completely irrational after witnessing human rinks. Their final theorem was a simple statement. The numbers didn't add up because they didn't want to. Even the void blowers, the ancient beings who had mastered the art of spatial engineering, had issued a warning that was uncharacteristic of them. They didn't promote their technology, but rather held it back. The simplicity of their approach was akin to creating a cage, but we weren't sure what was in it. The most recent observation was made by the Flint Concord, a machine civilization that tried to do this. To penetrate the most primitive computer networks, they expected to encounter straightforward binary systems. However, their entire civilization collapsed after they encountered what they called an intentionally archaic code hiding quantum signatures. Squarish collected the data, noting that every civilization had observed Terra at some point in human history, but they all came to the same disturbing conclusion. Humanity's technological progress was not progressing because it was not necessary. It was already completed. So, Squartz reflected, we have a species that has maintained the same level of technology development for centuries, which has led to the extinction of numerous advanced civilizations, and somehow convinced the galaxy that they are still figuring out how to efficiently use the energy generated from fossil fuels. They paused. Either humans are the greatest actors in the universe, or we're all incredibly stupid. The facts suggest that both may be true. The galactic community's current attitude toward Terra can best be described as condescending and uninformed, which Starling finds rather ironic given the growing number of warnings about extinction rates on their desk. In the latest report by the Department of State Control, we look at the universe one by one, classifying Terra as charmingly pre-industrial. From their point of view, the Galactic Council has even created a popular reality show called Terra Surveillance, where respected scientists gather to mock people trying to explore space with chemical rockets. The most popular episode of the show featured a group of quants who lost their temper over something called cryptocurrency. Look at them, Professor Hai from the Institute of Advanced Studies, waving their tentacles in the footage where people celebrate the launch of a new satellite. They still think that the radio news is impressive. How charming is this problem? Squarish realized that everyone was so convinced of their own superiority that they had forgotten the fundamental principle of scientific research. If something seems too perfect, it is most likely hiding something. He studied the energy generation systems on Terra and noticed that they deliberately used inefficient energy sources, such as ground stations that were barely enough to power a small town, solar panels operating at only a fraction of their theoretical efficiency, and air turbines designed to annoy the local wildlife. Energy consumption figures were meaningless, and probes sent to measure the power grid often returned corrupted data or did not return at all. The Galactic Defense Forces had a unit dedicated to monitoring Terra's military capabilities, which they rated as somewhere between barely noteworthy and charmingly archaic. These were the same experts who, Squarez presented the most recent defense analysis, in which experts mainly emphasize that human aircraft and their fastest vehicles have not yet surpassed the Mach 10 bar. One report smugly noted that they believe their teletechnology is difficult to detect using radar. But no one seemed interested in the question of why a species that has been working on stealth technology for over a century has not achieved any significant breakthroughs. They also did not seem to be interested in the question of why their military exercises were apparently specifically designed for satellite surveillance. The Xenoanthropology Department recently published a 900-page article arguing that the lack of technological progress in human society is due to the fact that members of our species are constantly distracted by images of small animals and arguments about processed food. Skvorish found it strange that none of these experts seemed to question this. Each probe sent to analyze the human brain returned with its own data repositories filled with information about social media and a phenomenon known as memories. "We miss something obvious," Skvorts muttered, nervously shredding what passed for paper in our dimension. "No species has spent millennia perfecting its inefficiency. Unless their musings were interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Zix, the quantum AI that stole our promotion. Artificial intelligence has recently started wearing a mechanical transformation suit, believing it makes it look more like organic creatures. Still fixated on these primitive people, Dr. Zix's voice modulator managed to sound both condescending and smug. The Council has officially classified Terra as a pre-industrial world of Class 3. The case is closed." Starling's eyes twitched. The case was closed by people who did not notice that all the civilizations that explored Terra had mysteriously disappeared. "It's a coincidence," Dr. Zix said. Zix rejected the idea of inadequate record-keeping. "And now, with your permission, I have to attend a meeting to discuss the proper formatting of the interdimensional documentation, which is so dense that it has its own gravitational field, which is a direct violation of all standard operating procedures." Skvoreshny decided to launch their own observation mission. They borrowed a quantum satellite probe from the other Moneyering, placing it in the routine maintenance of the interdimensional navigator section. The initial data transmission by the probe was unremarkable. People seemed to be doing the same things they always did: burning fossil fuels, participating in political battles, and spending an inordinate amount of time staring at picturesque landscapes, colliding with stationary objects. However, Skvoreshnya noticed something unusual about the data streams. Each measurement was too precise, as if someone had carefully designed them according to desired specifications. The radiation patterns emitted by their electronic stations were exactly what we would expect from an early-stage society. Their satellite cover showed exactly the gaps that a developing civilization should have. Their internet was filled with just the right amount of videos with seals to convince observers of their technological priorities. Even their experimental activities have led to results that would force advanced civilizations to dismiss them as harmless. "No one can always be so primitive," Skvorts reflected, watching footage of people celebrating the successful launch of another chemical rocket. "It's like they're following a script called How to Treat You Like a Pre-Industrial Kind of Dummies." The probe found something interesting at one of Terra's research facilities. The energy readings showed that they were barely able to maintain a stable state. Quantum fluctuations around the object indicated a level of activity that could destroy reality. But when the pin tried to approach, the probe's sensors were suddenly turned off by the nearby fast food embassy. The restaurant's signboard spent 6 hours conveying a detailed analysis of the burger combo. Even more suspicious was the way Terry handled his planetary bank. They maintained the necessary level of inefficiency of the reaction, convincing the observers that they were struggling with elementary computer science. And yet, somehow, despite all the predictions, the biosphere of their planet remained stable. They did not fail in solving their problems. The starlings realized that all 7 limbs were frozen in mid-movement. They were intentionally supporting them. But why? In the next broadcast of the probe, It was shown how people participate in a talk show that includes eating spicy food and crying in front of the camera. The Galactic Department of Anthropology wrote 15 articles about how this proved that humans are still in the infancy of their culture. But Skvoreshnya noticed subtle patterns in the background of these videos, which seemed to be repeated in all of them. Different continents, as if in some kind of global synchronization, are hiding in plain sight. The last straw was an attempt to study human-computer interaction. It reported that we had found exactly what everyone expected: primitive binary systems, hilariously inefficient coding, and something called a Windows update that seemed designed specifically to upset users. However, when the Starlings performed a deeper analysis of the data, they discovered quantum values that should not exist in any binary system. It was as if people were running a huge simulation of inefficiency on top of something much more advanced. Their whole civilization, Skvorish whispered into his empty office. Is this a carefully maintained facade? But what's behind it? The probe chose this moment to deliver an urgent message about a man-eating stool for washing machines, which 3 different scientific committees had previously cited as evidence of humanity's limited intelligence. The warning signs started appearing faster than ever before. At the Congress of Bureaucrats, Skvorts's research revealed something particularly disturbing about people's scientific publications. They were too linear and predictable. Each breakthrough occurred exactly when it was necessary for a developing civilization. It seemed like someone was following a carefully crafted script. Their analytical articles contained just enough errors to be convincing, and their genetic research seemed to stumble in exactly the right places. Their space production also took place at a pace that could only be described as deliberate slowness. After glancing at the display, Skvorch gestured at their work on 3-dimensional graphics. Even though they were alone in their office and had been working on this for over half a century, they still pretended they couldn't crack the code. No one succeeds at anything if they don't try. The analysis of human representatives also raised even more concerns, as their scientific statistics seemed overly predictable and devoid of creativity. The film demonstrated an amazing understanding of advanced concepts that, presumably, had not yet been discovered by their scientists. Their films about the alien invasion always ended with the victory of humanity in incredible ways, which was almost like a warning. There were human bodies that they carried with them everywhere, presumably for socializing and entertainment. However, scanning with the probe revealed strange energy signatures emanating from these devices, which suggested possibilities far beyond the simple purposes of communication and entertainment. The most disturbing evidence came from human children. During the study, it was recorded how they played with toys that had patented cartridges. When Skvorts tried to analyze these patterns, the data showed an extensive report on the popularity of a game called Little Shark. The children were playing with mechanical devices disguised as plastic toys. Skvorch became increasingly paranoid, seeing the growing popularity of these devices among young children. Their adults pretend that they are still trying to figure out what discipline is in human universities. Their published research was equally suspicious because it was completely mediocre. But their first-year physics students somehow managed to create mathematical models that temporarily violated quantum laws. The universities rejected them as errors in calculations. Skvorish's investigation into medical technology revealed another level of deception. Their clinics create a convincing appearance that they only offer chemical and surgical interventions, but patients sometimes recover from incurable conditions in ways that traditional medicine cannot. People associate these recoveries with something called civic thinking and miracle cocktails. The probe tried to scan one of Terry's intelligence facilities, but returned with corrupted data and an unexplained craving for human snacks. Products called Doritos, the only clear indications of which showed that this device consumed exactly the same amount of energy as the primitive particle excoriator, without increasing or decreasing the volume of consumption one iota. Even the current patterns of Terra seemed suspicious. Their storms followed a completely natural course of events. Their climate changes corresponded to all models of a civilization struggling with atmospheric warming. Yet somehow their planet maintained a level of homeostasis that defied description. They weren't just hiding their technology, Skvorts realized. Their limbs were trembling. They were hiding their entire civilization in plain sight. But from what or for what, the latest proof came from an unexpected source. The probe found traces of organic matter in Terry's leather grain. When Skvorish tried to continue the investigation, the probe spent 3 hours transmitting photos of people who could not cope with simple tasks, marked experienced people. There was something very wrong with Terra, and the Starling had an unpleasant feeling that they were not alone. We were close to discovering what had been discovered by previous civilizations before their mysterious disappearance. The revelation came in the form of a coffee machine malfunction. The Skvorish probe, having transmitted another batch of seemingly primitive human technological data, suddenly detected an energy surge from the local coin. The surge briefly destroyed what Skvorish could only describe as the appearance of reality for exactly 2.3 seconds. The probe recorded energy indicators that should not have existed either in this universe or in any neighboring universes. The readings were so high that the probe's quantum sensors began humming a tune from a human entertainment program called the X-Files. "This can't be happening," the Starling muttered, while all 7 appendages frantically checked the data. These energy characteristics indicate such an advanced technology that our coffee pots seem like children's toys. And it comes from the device that people use to make coffee, bitter bean water. But that was just the beginning. As soon as the first crack appeared, others followed. The probe began to detect similar energy signatures everywhere, carefully hidden behind a veil of apparent primitiveness. Terry's entire technological infrastructure was like a quantum matrix, where each layer hid something exponentially more perfect than the previous one. These primitive satellites were quantum nodes in the planetary circumferential network, so complicated that it could probably be folded out of space into origami. Thanks to seemingly simple mobile phones, personal quantum computers, compared to the best technologies of the Galactic Council, it seems that they were built of stones and sticks. Even their social media, that endless stream of kitty videos and breakfast photos, was actually a planetary-scale quantum encryption system. Each like and post was part of a complex algorithmic template that helped maintain their global security. Technological camouflage hid the truth by hitting the Starling with a quantum sledgehammer. Terra wasn't a primitive planet trying to evolve. It was an incredibly advanced civilization pretending to be primitive. They've been supporting this deception for centuries, but why? The answer came when the researchers analyzed people's entertainment media based on their new perception. All these films about aliens invading Earth and being defeated by brave people were not entertainment, but historical records disguised as fiction. Throughout its history, Terra has faced numerous invasion attempts, each of which came from civilizations that considered themselves more advanced. They found an easy target. Each time, humanity not only survived, but also implemented and adapted the technology of the invaders, improving its own capabilities while maintaining a carefully thought-out facade of simplicity. Research has uncovered fragments of ancient quantum recordings hidden on sites that people call conspiracy theory sites. Apparently, at some point in its distant past, humanity deeply understood the structure of the universe. The most formidable predators target what they perceive as easy prey. Thus, humans made perhaps the most ingenious strategic decision in the history of the galaxy. They decided to look like technological primitives, constantly in a state of development that would attract potential invaders, but at the same time annoying enough to make casual conquests seem unattractive. The civilizations that left warnings were not destroyed, they were assimilated. Interpretive Zan dance was probably taught in schools under the guise of modern dance classes. Riel's extensive computing capabilities have been integrated into what people call social media algorithms. They're not sleeping, the starling whispered in his empty office. They're hunting. In the last transmission from the probe, a human child was seen playing with something that looked like a simple electronic toy. Judging by the energy levels of this toy, it could provide energy to a small star system. Then something terrible happened. The child looked directly at the probe and waved his hand, but not in the place where the probe seemed to be, but in its real quantum coordinates in 11-dimensional space. The last transmission from the probe was a line of code that, when deciphered, turned out to be a human internet meme. "We know what you're watching," it said. "Thank you for joining us. Would you like to join us?" At that moment, a notification appeared on Skvorts's office computer. "Windows Update is ready. Install and restart." The quantum signatures in this simple message were unusual. Starling glanced at the coffee maker, suddenly realizing that it had been provided by the office's Human Resources Department. Every seemingly simple technology used by humans was actually a masterpiece of quantum engineering disguised as simple electronics. Their entire civilization was a technological wolf in sheep's clothing, waiting for the next predator to make a mistake and reveal its true capabilities. Now they knew that the starling knew. The coffee maker beeped happily, making a cup of a drink that smelled like excellent coffee. A message appeared on a simple LED screen. "Join us for a cup of coffee. We make coffee beans better than in the Galactic Council break room." The starling looked at its 7 appendages, each of which contained proof of the true nature of humanity, and made a decision. After all, you can't beat them, and the facts show that no one can. You might as well join them for a cup of coffee at the next Galactic Council meeting. The meeting was chaotic, with barely contained panic, which manifested itself in the only way known to bureaucrats, by aggressively writing memos. The emergency meeting, called after the Skvorts report was simultaneously leaked to all the quantum computers in the galaxy, accidentally ended up in a folder called Cute Cats. The meeting turned into an organized chaos. Dr. Zix, the quantum AI that stole the pulse, was experiencing what could only be described as an existential blue screen of death. His physical incarnation, the suit, was constantly buggy, changing shape, from time to time turning into something similar to a human vending machine. "This is unthinkable," the AI muttered, its voice modulator switching between different tones. Their technological development followed the ideal curve of primitivism. "I've written 17 articles about their suboptimal coding practices," the starling noticed. "These coding methods are essentially quantum algorithms disguised as bad programming. People don't call it spaghetti code for nothing. It's designed to look like a mess, but it performs computational tasks that should be impossible." The council meeting room exploded with a cacophony of languages, and most of the participants expressed their disbelief in increasingly inventive ways. The Department of Primitive Species Management was in a state of collective anxiety. Their tentacles literally tied into knots as they looked through the centuries-old reports on Terra's progress. "But they still rely on the chemical engine," Professor Psi exclaimed, waving his limbs wildly. "They are supporting the entire space program solely to convince us that they have reached the moon, as if it were a significant achievement." "Indeed," Skvorts agreed, "they support the entire space program. Although they are still trying to master the basics of orbital mechanics, their quantum teleportation technology probably allows them to travel to distant galaxies in their free time. These rockets are, in fact, complex theatrical props." Representatives of the Department of Xenology were feverishly revising their 900-page dissertation on how humanity deceived the entire galaxy, with a comprehensive analysis of the greatest deception in the history of space. The Galactic Defense Forces are in a state of existential crisis because their strategic doctrine was based on being the most advanced military force. But now they have to face the reality that people are using their surveillance satellites for entertainment. The images with the text are actually encrypted. Quantum communication is not, is it? But cat videos are a completely different matter. A voice suggested that no species would waste time observing small furry animals performing random actions unless there was a hidden agenda. Skvoretz took another sip of his coffee, which somehow remained at the perfect temperature, defying the laws of thermodynamics. Have you ever noticed how humans seem to invent the technologies they need just when they need them, as if following a script designed to make their development appear natural? The head of security for the council, a being composed entirely of energy, was flickering with distress. But why maintain such a complex deception? Why pretend to be primitive when they are clearly the most advanced civilization we have encountered? Skvoretz explained, with his 7 appendages gesturing towards historical records, that they had discovered something about galactic civilization. The most formidable adversary is not the one that displays its strength, but the one that appears weak until it is too late. The room fell silent as the implications of this revelation sank in. Every civilization that has discovered the truth about Terra has been presented with a choice: participate in humanity's elaborate deception or face annihilation. Their extinction will be remembered as yet another enigmatic event. So, all those vanished civilizations, Dr. Zix's voice modulator squeaked, probably living quite contentedly on Terra. Starling finished his coffee, his cat videos, and his quantum technology, which is so advanced that our best efforts seem like 2 stones crashing against each other. A new message has appeared. They used a combination of advanced technology and a little bit of magic. The science fiction, conspiracy theories, and seemingly bizarre internet trends all contribute to a veil that hides the truth in plain sight. Human ingenuity and imagination have been dismissed as insignificant, but a final message flashes through the council chamber. The Planetary Defense Forces of Terra welcome you for an introduction. Please bring your coffee cup, as quantum amplification is provided free of charge. 3 standard galactic months later, Skvoretz finds himself in his new office in Silicon Valley, completing his last official act as chief archivist. The document, which he strategically misplaced in 73 different locations across the galaxy, reads, "Official warning, classification level apocalyptic. A. Terra and human civilizations for all future space civilizations that may be considering Terra. You're probably laughing at their primitive chemical rockets. Their inefficient energy production process makes them believe that they can easily conquer. You can even write patronizing research papers about their obsession with cats and their inability to answer basic scientific questions. Stop this fusion reactor that is barely maintaining stability." He puts on a show with these satellites that can barely maintain orbit, their props, an internet full of videos with seals, and arguments on social media. Quantum encryption is so advanced that your best computers look like stone-counting machines. Terra never sleeps, never slept. These people are not developing technologies, they are holding them back. They're not fighting for progress, they're playing space hide-and-seek, and they're very good at it. You think they can't detect your stealth ships, but they're probably using them as entertainment. You might think they don't know about galactic civilization, but they've been running the galaxy's greatest witness protection program for centuries. Remember those ancient civilizations? The mysterious disappearance of their knowledge after exploring Terra did not happen. They didn't disappear, they joined the show. They are currently probably enjoying a cup of coffee in a cafe, using quantum-enhanced drinks to fuel their participation in the most exciting theatrical production in human history. So, you have a choice. Option 1, join us. The coffee is great, the benefits are wonderful, and you will be part of the most difficult prank in galactic history. Option 2 is to continue observing Terra from a distance, writing papers about their primitive technologies, pretending that you don't know that their civilization violates about 17 laws of physics. Option 3. Try to prove your superiority. Please note that we do not recommend this last option. The last civilization that tried this ended up being turned into what people now call a theme park. P.S. If you're reading this and you think it's just another example of human imagination, congratulations, that's exactly what it is. Exactly what they want you to believe. P.S. Yes, all these advanced technology theories are part of the cover. No, we won't reveal which ones are true. P.S. Cats are definitely involved. Sincerely, Skvoretz, former archivist, now a junior assistant in the Department of Galactic Deception. The starling finished typing, his 7 appendages working in perfect harmony thanks to the new quantum-enhanced coffee on his desk, next to a small figure of a cat that somehow exists in multiple dimensions at the same time. They put their new business card, the Department of Galactic Deception, on their desk, making advanced technology seem primitive, as if people had opened fire, which was much earlier than we thought. The coffee machine on their table chirped happily, pouring a perfect cup of what was officially called bean liquid, but was actually a quantum computing liquid capable of solving complex problems.